Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're getting into something we all navigate pretty much daily. Negotiation.
Whether we call it that or not.
Exactly. And we're not just, guessing here. We're digging into yes, negotiating agreement without giving in. The big one by Roger Fisher, William Ury, and Bruce Patton.
Right. The Harvard Negotiation Project, folks. They really systemized thinking about this stuff. Based out of Harvard Law Conflict Management Group, they worked with, well, everyone.
Lawyers, business people, diplomats, you name it. And the goal really is to find a practical way to agree without just giving in or wrecking relationships.
Yeah. It tackles that everyday dilemma. How do you get what you need amicably?
And for everyone listening, we know you want the core insights, those aha moments, without getting bogged down for weeks. So this deep dive, it's your shortcut.
Think of it like we're extracting the essential negotiation principles for you, upgrading the mental software maybe.
I like that. So here's the plan. First, we'll look at why the usual way-taking positions often backfires.
The common pitfalls.
Yeah. Then we'll unpack their big idea. Interest-based negotiation, the four main principles. We'll talk about getting creative with solutions.
Generating options, yeah.
Why objective standards matter, understanding your power, that BATNA concept. Handling tough tactics, and some, practical questions. Ready to jump into why just saying, I want X, can be a problem.
Let's do it. So Fisher and Ury really zero in on this thing called positional bargaining. It's basically, it's when each side picks a spot, says, this is what I'll accept, and then it just becomes a battle of wills.
Like digging trenches.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Who can pull the other side closer to their line?
And they use that Cold War example, right? The U.S. and Soviets on nuclear testing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The talks stalled over the number of on-site inspections. Soviets offered 3, U.S. wanted 10. Boom. Deadlock.
And the point was they got so fixated on the numbers, 3 versus 10,
Home position.
that they lost sight of the why. The U.S. interest was verification, feeling confident the treaty was followed. The Soviet interest was avoiding, too much intrusion, sovereignty concerns.
Right. And if they'd focused on those underlying needs verification and minimal intrusion, maybe the solution wouldn't have been about a specific number at all.
Could have been different methods, maybe. Tech, collaborative monitoring.
Precisely. Something that addresses both core concerns rather than just haggling over a digit. That's the trap of sticking to positions.
And if it's tough with two parties, imagine like a UN conference. Hundreds of countries.
Oh, it gets way harder.
Yeah.
Just forming a position everyone in a bloc agrees on is a nightmare, let alone changing it later.
It's like herd management. Plus, you get these coalitions based on, superficial stuff, not deep interests.
Yeah, symbolic alliances. And within this positional dance, you see different styles emerge. Fisher and Ury talk about soft versus hard.
Okay, what's the difference?
Well, soft bargaining is all about preserving the relationship. You might make concessions easily, avoid conflict, prioritize agreement over maybe the best substance for you.
Like splitting the difference just to be nice, even if it doesn't make sense?
Kind of. The goal is amicable agreement. But the risk is you get sloppy agreements. You're vulnerable to someone playing hardball. They use that O. Henry story.
Ah, the gift of the Magi, where they sell their treasures for gifts that are now useless.
That's the one. Sweet sentiment, terrible outcome in terms of meeting actual needs. That's the risk of being too soft.
Okay, so the other side is hard bargaining. That sounds like.
Winning is the only goal. Digging in, threats, pressure tactics, aiming to force the other side to yield.
You might win that round, but I bet it burns bridges.
It often does. Damages relationships.
Oh.
And the result? It often just reflects who's more stubborn, not what's actually fair or wise.
And what happens when soft meets hard?
Well, that's the kicker. Hard bargaining tends to dominate soft bargaining. If one person is pushing relentlessly and the other keeps yielding to keep the peace.
The hard bargainer usually gets their way.
Pretty much. As they put it, playing nice against hardball might just mean you lose your shirt.
Okay, so positional bargaining, whether soft or hard, has serious downsides. What's the alternative? This is the core of getting to, yes,
Right.
Principled negotiation.
Exactly. And it stands on 4 basic pillars. Let's walk through them.
Pillar number 1.
Separate the people from the problem.
Okay, unpack that.
It means be easy on the people, but tough on the issue. Treat the other negotiator respectfully, work on the relationship, but don't back down from tackling the substantive problem head on.
That makes sense, because you're always juggling two things in a negotiation, aren't you? The actual deal points to the substance and your ongoing connection with the person.
Right, and positional bargaining often makes you trade one against the other. You sacrifice the relationship to win the point, or you give up on the point to save the relationship.
But principled negotiation says you can and should aim for both, especially if you have to deal with these people again. That relationship might be worth way more than this one issue.
Absolutely. And this separating people from the problem gets into the psychology of it all. Perception, emotion, communication. These are often tangled up with the substance.
So if our perceptions are skewed, or emotions are boiling over, or we're just not hearing each other, that's part of the problem to solve.
Precisely. You need psychological tools as much as substantive arguments.
Let's take perception first. They say understanding the other side's thinking is the problem. How so?
Because often the conflict is the difference in how you each see the situation. Think about their tenant-landlady example.
Right. Tenant sees high rent, place needs paint. Landlady sees rent hasn't changed, tenant's been rough on the place. Same apartment, totally different realities.
Exactly. And the key insight is you don't have to agree with their perception to understand it. But understanding it is crucial. It helps you see what's really driving them.
And helps you frame your own points better, presumably.
Absolutely. And a big warning here. Don't assume their intentions based on your fears. That story about the ride home offer being misinterpreted.
Yeah.
Our anxieties can really warp how we see things.
Okay, perception, then emotion. Negotiations aren't just logic puzzles.
Far from it. People get angry, frustrated, scared. You need to recognize those emotions, yours and theirs. Don't ignore them.
Make them explicit. Like, it sounds like you're feeling really frustrated about this.
Yes, acknowledge them as legitimate, and sometimes just letting the other side vent without you reacting defensively can clear the air tremendously.
That steel industry committee example was interesting, the unspoken rule about only one person being angry at a time.
Right. A way to manage the emotional temperature. Allow steam, but contain the explosion.
Okay. Perception, emotion, then communication. This seems fundamental.
It is. And it's not just about talking. It's about listening, actively listening, trying to grasp the reality as they see it.
So you understand before you jump in with your own view.
Exactly. Use phrases like, let me see if I follow you. Or, so from your perspective, the issue is, summarize their point, maybe even acknowledge its strengths before presenting your counter.
That builds rapport, makes them more receptive.
Much more. And communicate your message in a way they can hear. Act inconsistently with their negative expectations, like Sadat going to Jerusalem. Give them a stake in the outcome by involving them. Make it our process, not just yours.
Got it. So principle 1, separate people problem. Principle 2.
Focus on interests, not positions.
We touched on this, but let's dive deeper. Positions are the what, interests are the why.
Pretty much. Interests are the underlying needs, desires, concerns, fears, the silent movers behind the stated positions.
Like the library window story. Position, open. Position, closed. Interest, fresh air. Interest, no draft.
Exactly. And once you know the interests, solutions appear. Open a window somewhere else. Problem solved.
And the Egypt-Israel-Sinai example too. Position, keep some land, Israel. Position, full sovereignty, Egypt.
But the interests were security for Israel, sovereignty for Egypt. The solution, demilitarize the Sinai under Egyptian sovereignty, met both core interests.
What's powerful there is that one interest can often be satisfied in many ways. Focusing on interests just opens up the possibility space.
Hugely. You move beyond a single fixed demand to exploring options.
Right.
And you often find shared interests or differing interests that aren't opposed. They're just different, maybe even complementary.
Things you both want, or things where one side cares more than the other, creating trade-offs.
Exactly. That's where the win-win potential really lies. Low cost for you, high benefit for them, and vice versa.
So how do we find these hidden interests? Just ask.
Asking why is key. When they state a position, ask why they hold it. Gently probe behind the justifications.
And why not too? Like, why wouldn't they accept my proposal? What interest of theirs does it block?
Yes, understanding their perceived choice is vital. Also, realize each side has multiple interests, usually. It's rarely just about money, for instance.
And those basic human needs. Security, economic well-being, belonging, recognition, control. They're often lurking underneath.
Almost always. It's helpful to actually list out the interests you identify for both sides.
And then, in the negotiation itself, talk about the interests.
Explicitly. Explain your interest and why they're legitimate. Look, the reason this delivery date is important is because, and crucially, Acknowledge their interests as part of the problem you're both trying to solve. I understand you're concerned about X, and we need to find a way to address that while also meeting my need for Y.
Put the problem before the answer. Frame it collaboratively.
Exactly. Be hard on the problem, finding ways to meet the interest, but stay soft on the people.
Okay, principles 1 and 2 covered. What's principle 3?
Invent options for mutual gain.
Ah, getting creative. Moving beyond the idea that there's just one fixed pie to divide.
Right. So often in negotiation, people think either I get it or you get it. Fisher and Uri say that mindset really limits potential. You need to actively generate possibilities.
This is where brainstorming comes in.
Yes, but with specific rules.
Yeah.
The absolute key is to separate inventing from judging. Don't evaluate or criticize any idea during the brainstorming phase. Just get them out there.
Quantity over quality at first.
Definitely. And aim to broaden the options. Look for qualitatively different approaches, not just slight variations. Maybe a small group, informal setting. Write ideas where everyone sees them. No criticism allowed.
Can you brainstorm with the other side? Seems risky.
It can be. You need to be careful. Make it crystal clear it's not negotiation, just idea generation. Suggest multiple options simultaneously rather than just one. But yes, it can be very powerful for finding solutions that work for everyone and building joint ownership.
How do you broaden the options effectively? They have that chart thing.
The circle chart. It's a structured way to think. Step 1, define the problem, specific. Step 2, analyze it. Diagnose causes, broader issues. Step 3, consider general approaches, strategies, theoretical solutions. Step 4, devise specific actions, concrete steps. It helps move between the specific and the general to spark ideas.
Like their Northern Ireland example from the problem of sectarian division, they analyzed shared history needs, brainstormed general approaches like joint education, then got specific with things like a common history workbook or teacher exchanges.
Exactly. It helps break linear thinking. Another way is actively looking for shared interests you can build on.
Things you both actually want, even if you hadn't realized it.
Right. And then critically, look for ways to dovetail differing interests. This is where the magic often happens.
Differences aren't always bad.
Not at all. Differences in belief about the future, tolerance for risk, time preference. These can be the basis for great deals.
Like, if I want cash now and you're happy to pay more later, that's a potential fit.
Precisely. Or if one side is optimistic about future profits and the other is pessimistic, you can structure a deal that reflects those different beliefs. Ask for their preferences between options you find equally acceptable. Find things that are low cost for you but high value for them, and vice versa.
It sounds like making it easy for them to say yes.
That's the final piece of inventing options. Focus on their decision. Who actually makes it? What are their constraints, their interests? Frame your proposal so it solves their problem too.
Don't make it look like they're caving. Offer a yesable proposition. Maybe even draft potential agreements.
Yes, make it concrete. Make the consequences of agreeing seem attractive and credible. Offers generally work better than threats. Think about what would make it easy for them more for. Maybe they get credit for the final idea.
Okay. Invent options. That's 3. What's the 4th principle?
Insist on using objective criteria.
Meaning, not just deciding based on who's more stubborn.
Exactly. Deciding things based purely on a contest of wills is inefficient, breeds resentment, and often leads to arbitrary results. Instead, use independent standards of fairness.
Like what? Market value, precedent, scientific judgment, professional standards.
All of those. Things external to the negotiator's whims. When someone's just being stubborn, you shift the focus. Okay, let's look at what the blue book value is for this car, or what standard industry practice for this kind of clause.
So you're grounding the discussion in something external and hopefully fair.
Right, and this becomes even more important with multiple parties. It helps avoid endless political maneuvering. That Law of the Sea conference example is great.
Where the MIT model for seabed mining fees helped break the deadlock between India and the U.S.
Yes. Because it provided an objective economic basis, neither side felt they were just giving in to the other. They were deferring to a neutral analysis. It actually improved the solution and the relationship.
And these criteria should apply to both sides, right? Reciprocity.
Ideally, yes. Ask if they'd accept the same standard if the roles were reversed. Fair procedures also help, like one cuts, the other chooses, for dividing something.
But it's not about just insisting on my preferred criteria.
No, absolutely not. It's not my principles über alles. You have to be open to reason. open to discussing which criteria are most appropriate for this situation. Maybe there are several legitimate standards. The goal is to agree on a fair process for choosing and applying the criteria.
Maybe even bring in a third party to help identify fair standards.
That's an option. The key is the mindset shift. You're not arguing from principles just to back up your position. You're genuinely seeking agreement on the right principles to apply.
Like the car insurance example. Instead of just haggling price, the person asks the adjuster, how did you arrive at that figure? What's the objective basis?
Exactly. It shifts the whole dynamic. It forces justification based on something other than just because I said so.
Okay, those are the 4 core principles. But what if? What if the other side just seems way more powerful? More money, more connections, whatever.
The power imbalance question. Very real. And getting to yes is clear. No method can guarantee success if all the leverage is stacked against you. But it offers crucial tools.
What are they?
2 main goals when facing power. Protect yourself from making a bad agreement and make the absolute most of the assets you do have.
Protect yourself? How?
Know your BATNA, your best alternative to a negotiated agreement.
Your walkaway option, your plan B.
Exactly. This is your shield. If you don't know what you'll do if this negotiation fails, you're negotiating out of fear. Fear of no deal. That makes you vulnerable.
You might accept something terrible just to get something.
Precisely. The insecurity of an unknown BATNA is a huge disadvantage. You need to know, realistically, what happens if you walk away. And don't be overly pessimistic before you've actually explored those alternatives.
So figure out your BATNA before you even start talking seriously.
Ideally, yes. Define your bottom line, your reservation price. Maybe set a tripwire. A point where offers become so bad you need to pause and seriously reassess walking away.
Okay, that's protection. How does BATNA help you make the most of your assets?
Because the better your BATNA, the greater your power. Simple as that.
So power isn't just about who has more, but about who needs the deal less.
Exactly. Your power comes from how attractive your alternative is. If you have a great plan B, you can push harder for a good deal in plan A because you're less desperate.
How do you develop a good BATNA?
3 steps. First, invent a list of actions you could take if no agreement is reached. Second, improve the most promising ideas, make them more realistic and actionable. Third, tentatively select the one that seems best. That's your BATNA.
And then you measure every offer against it.
Constantly. Is this offer better than my BATNA? If yes, maybe consider it. If no, you need to either improve the offer or walk away.
Should you think about their BATNA too?
Definitely. They might be bluffing or overestimating their own alternative. The more you understand their BATNA, the better you can gauge what's realistically possible in the negotiation. If their expectations seem way off base because they have an inflated view of their BATNA, you might need to gently bring them back to reality.
So a good BATNA lets you negotiate confidently on the merits, not out of weakness.
That's the core idea. It frees you up to use the other principled negotiation techniques effectively.
Okay, but what if they're not just powerful, they're also playing hardball, using aggressive tactics? You mentioned negotiation jujitsu.
Right. This is about how to handle positional attacks without getting sucked into their game. The core idea, don't push back directly against their force. Sidestep it and redirect it towards the problem.
Like in martial arts, using their momentum against them.
Kind of. So if they attack your idea, don't defend it. Instead, invite criticism. What concerns you about this proposal? If they state a hard position, don't reject it outright. Treat it as one possible option and explore the interest behind it. Help me understand why that particular solution works best for you.
Deflect the attack on you or your idea and turn it into an exploration of the problem.
Exactly. Ask them how their position addresses the underlying issues. Mine their position for the interests it serves. Discuss the principles behind their stance. Maybe explore hypothetically what would happen if their position was accepted.
That Nassmeyer hypothetical question was clever. What would happen if we agreed to this?
Yes. It forces them to think through the consequences. And asking for their advice is powerful too. If you were facing my constraints, what would you suggest? It reframes the dynamic.
And using questions and silence.
Very effective. Questions invite answers and rationale, not resistance like declarative statements do. And silence. Well, if they make an unreasonable demand, just pausing can be incredibly effective. Let the silence do the work. It often prompts them to elaborate or even moderate their stance.
So jiu-jitsu is about redirecting pressure, not meeting force with force.
Precisely. Keep the focus on interests, options, and criteria, even when they're trying to pull you into a positional fight.
But sometimes it goes beyond hardball into, well, dirty tricks, tactics that feel unfair.
Yes, and Fisher and Urey address this directly. They define these as tactics that violate the principle of reciprocity, designed purely for one-sided gain. Things like deception, psychological manipulation, positional pressure tactics.
What are common ways people react? And why don't they work?
Often, the people either just put up with it, hoping it goes away, or they respond in kind, playing dirty back. Neither is usually effective. Putting up with it rewards bad behavior. Responding in kind just escalates the conflict and damages the relationship, often leading to no agreement or a bad one.
So what's the principled response?
3 steps, again. First, recognize the tactic. Be aware of what they're doing. Second, raise the issue explicitly. Call it out, but calmly. Third, negotiate about the rules of the game. Question the legitimacy and desirability of the tactic itself. Shift the focus to procedure.
And again, separate the people from the problem. Attack the tactic, not their personal integrity.
Crucial. I'm finding the lighting in here makes it hard to concentrate. Could we adjust it? Is better than, are you trying to boil me alive in here? Focus on the objective issue raised by the tactic.
They list a bunch of these tactics, like questionable authority. I have to check with my boss.
Right. The counter is to try and establish their actual authority up front, or get commitment subject to approval. Don't make concessions until you know they can finalize the deal.
What about deception? Not telling the whole truth versus outright lies.
Good faith doesn't require total disclosure, but deliberate deception about facts or intentions is a dirty trick. If you suspect it, try to verify information independently. Building verification mechanisms into the agreement itself can help.
Then there's psychological warfare.
Yeah, stressful settings, personal attacks, the good guy, bad guy routine.
The classic. One's reasonable, the other's tough.
Recognize it for what it is. Ask the good guy the same principled questions about the basis for their position. Don't let the routine manipulate you. For personal attacks or stressful settings, just call attention to it directly. Often that's enough to make it stop.
Threats.
Good negotiators rarely use threats. Warnings about consequences outside their control are more legitimate. If threatened, you can try to ignore it, point out the downsides for them if they carry it out, or frame it as an illegitimate tactic and refuse to negotiate under duress. Always respond with principle.
What about refusing to negotiate? Or those lock-in tactics making it seem like they can't back down?
Refusal. Recognize it, discuss it, suggest alternatives like mediation. Lock-in tactics. Try not to take them too seriously. Maybe find face-saving ways for them to unlock, or, again, focus on principles and objective criteria rather than their supposed commitment.
Calculated delays. Take it or leave it.
Delays. Make the tactic explicit. Negotiate about the schedule. Create failing opportunities linked to objective deadlines. Take it or leave it. Recognize it's often a bluff or just the start of negotiation, not the end. You can ignore it and keep talking about options, or explicitly state you prefer interactive decision-making.
It really comes down to recognizing these tactics and refusing to play that game, insisting on principled negotiation instead.
Exactly. And asking yourself that crucial question: would you consider this tactic fair if it were used against you? It helps to set your own ethical boundaries. Maybe even start the negotiation by agreeing on the process. Shall we aim for a wise, fair agreement, or are we just going to battle it out?
Being prepared to counter these tactics with firmness and principle seems key.
It is. Don't reward bad behavior, but don't get dragged down into the mud either. Stick to the high ground of principled negotiation.
So, wrapping this up, the big message from Getting to Yes, really, is that this principled approach offers just a better way. Better agreements, better relationships.
Absolutely. It helps you reach outcomes that genuinely satisfy underlying interests, not just surface positions. And it does so in a way that preserves or even improves how you interact with the other side.
And like they say, a lot of this might feel like common sense on some level. We kind of know these things.
We do. But the book's power lies in organizing it into a clear, actionable framework.
Yeah.
It gives you a system for thinking and acting more effectively in negotiations.
But reading it isn't enough, is it? It's about practice.
Oh, definitely. Skill develops through application, trying these things out, seeing what works, refining your approach.
And those aha moments we aimed for. If we had to pick a few, that sharp distinction between positions and interests seems huge.
Game-changing.
The power of brainstorming multiple options before deciding. Don't just accept the first halfway decent idea.
Right. Expand the pie before you divide it.
And knowing your BTNA, understanding your walkaway power, that feels fundamental.
It really is your bedrock in any negotiation. Protection and power rolled into one.
So here's a final thought for everyone listening. Think about your last negotiation. Big or small, work or home. Were you stuck on positions? Or were you exploring interests?
What might have been different if you'd consciously applied these ideas? Maybe separated the people from the problem more, or insisted on some objective criteria.
And looking forward, how can you approach your next negotiation differently? Which of these principles could you really focus on trying out?
Yeah, reflect on what resonated most. How can you integrate these principles, even just one or two to start, into how you navigate agreements in your own life? It's a continuous learning process.
Definitely food for thought. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.